My wife said she was meeting a friend for lunch. I followed her downtown and watched Hazel enter a small medical clinic instead of the restaurant she'd mentioned. Something twisted in my gut as I sat in my truck across the street, engine idling, watching the glass doors of Northern Valley Women's Health. I'm Asher Trevan, 42 years old, and I've been fixing industrial equipment for 20 years. My hands are permanently stained with grease, my back aches from crawling under machinery, and my wife treats me like I'm something she scraped off her expensive shoes. But I'm not stupid. When patterns change, when lies start stacking up, I notice. The clinic looked expensive, all chrome and glass, the kind of place where Hazel's lawyer friends would go. I'd never seen it before, tucked between a coffee shop and an accounting firm on Maple Street. The waiting area was visible through floor-to-ceiling windows, filled with comfortable chairs and soft lighting. Hazel emerged 40 minutes later, moving differently than when she'd gone in. Her shoulders were straighter, her step lighter. She practically floated to her BMW, and I caught a glimpse of her face as she passed under a streetlight. She was smiling, not the practiced courtroom smile she wore for clients, but something genuine. Something I hadn't seen directed at me in months. I followed her home from a distance, my mind racing. Why lie about lunch? Why visit a women's health clinic? The questions multiplied as I watched her pull into our driveway and disappear into the house we'd shared for 8 years. That evening, I waited until Hazel was in the shower before calling the clinic. My heart hammered against my ribs as the receptionist answered. Northern Valley Women's Health. This is Patricia. Hi, this is Asher Trevan. My wife Hazel had an appointment today, and I wanted to confirm our next visit. Oh, Mr. Trevan, congratulations. Dr. Varen mentioned you might call. Let me transfer you to her office. The line went quiet, then a warm, professional voice came on. Mr. Trevan, this is Dr. Lumi Varen. I'm so pleased to speak with you. Are you the father? The words hit me like a sledgehammer. I'm sorry, what? The baby, of course. Your wife is about 8 weeks along. Everything looks perfect. I know this must be exciting for both of you. 8 weeks. I counted backward, my hands shaking as I gripped the phone. 8 weeks ago, I'd been in Denver for 3 weeks, installing new equipment at a manufacturing plant. The longest I'd been away from home in years. Mr. Trevan, are you there? Yes. Thank you, doctor. I hung up and sank into my kitchen chair, staring at the calendar on our refrigerator. Red X's marked the days I'd been gone. 21 days in Denver. No way that baby was mine. But someone had been here while I was away. Someone Hazel had mentioned several times during our phone calls. Someone who'd helped her with yard work and fixed the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom. My brother Soren. The shower was still running upstairs. I had maybe 5 minutes before Hazel came down. I moved to her purse, hands trembling as I found her phone. No passcode. She'd never needed one before. Her text messages were mostly work-related, but I found what I was looking for in a thread with Soren. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. A's still in Denver until Friday. Miss you already. House feels empty without you. Think he suspects anything? No way. He's too busy with his machines to notice anything. The messages went back weeks. Casual at first, then increasingly intimate. My vision blurred as I scrolled through conversations that painted a picture of my wife and brother spending afternoons together, evenings together, nights together. The shower stopped. I closed the phone and slipped it back into her purse, then grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge. When Hazel came downstairs in her robe, I was sitting at the kitchen table, trying to look normal. How was lunch with Jennifer? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Oh, fine. Same old gossip from the office. She moved around the kitchen, making tea, not meeting my eyes. She's thinking about leaving the firm. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Jennifer, not a friend I'd ever met, despite Hazel mentioning her occasionally. I made a mental note to ask more about Jennifer later. Soren called while you were out? I lied. Said he wanted to thank you for letting him use the guest room last weekend. Hazel's hand paused on the tea kettle, just for a second, but I caught it. He's going through a rough patch with the divorce, she said. I thought it was the right thing to do. Of course, family first, right? She finally looked at me and I saw something flicker across her face. Guilt? Fear? It was gone too quickly to identify. I'm tired. Long day at the office. She kissed my forehead, a perfunctory gesture, and headed upstairs. Don't stay up too late. I sat alone in the kitchen until well past midnight, planning my next move. The boxing gym where I worked out had taught me patience, strategy. You don't swing wild when you're angry. You wait for the right opening, then you make every punch count. Coach Malley always said the best fighters were the ones who could think 3 moves ahead. I was about to put that philosophy to the test. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to the downtown library. I needed to use a computer that couldn't be traced back to me. The librarian, Mrs. Henderson, recognized me from my high school days and waved me toward the computer terminals. I spent 2 hours researching private investigators, then decided against it. Too expensive, too risky. Instead, I created a new email account and started documenting everything I could remember. Dates, times, conversations, the timeline of Soren's visits while I was away. Hazel's behavior changes over the past 2 months. By noon, I had a plan. I drove to the electronics store and bought a small digital recorder and a basic security camera. The young clerk, probably fresh out of college, tried to sell me on a whole home security system. Just need something simple, I told him. Want to keep an eye on things while I'm at work. Back home, I installed the camera in our living room, hidden behind some books on a shelf. The recorder went into the kitchen drawer where Hazel kept her spare keys. Both devices were voice-activated and would store everything to memory cards I could review later. That evening, Hazel came home late again, 3rd time this week. Client dinner, she explained, hanging her coat in the closet. The Morrison case is getting complicated. I nodded and went back to reading my magazine, but I was watching her reflection in the dark window, noting how she checked her phone constantly, how she smiled at messages she thought I couldn't see. Soren stopped by the office today, she said casually. He's looking for work. I might be able to get him some freelance research projects. That's generous of you. He's family, Asher. He needs help getting back on his feet. Family. The word tasted bitter now. I thought about all the times I'd helped Soren over the years, loaned him money for his apartment deposit, co-signed for his car, let him stay with us when his marriage fell apart, and this was how he repaid me. Maybe I should call him, I said. See how he's doing. He's pretty busy right now, job hunting, you know. Might be better to give him some space. Of course. Can't have the husband calling while they're planning their next rendezvous. I waited until Hazel was asleep, then checked the memory card from the kitchen recorder. Most of it was just household noise, but there was one conversation from earlier that day. Hazel on the phone, speaking quietly. I can't keep making excuses. No, he doesn't suspect anything. The appointment went fine. Dr. Varen was very professional. 8 weeks, just like we thought. I know it's complicated, but we'll figure it out. I have to go. He'll be home soon. I saved the file and labeled it with the date. Evidence was evidence, and I was going to need all I could get. The next few days passed in a strange routine. I went to work, fixed machines, came home to a wife who was becoming a stranger. But now I was watching everything, recording everything, building a case like the lawyers on Hazel's legal dramas. Friday evening, Hazel announced she was going out with colleagues. Office happy hour, she said, applying lipstick in the hallway mirror. Might be late. Don't wait up. After she left, I checked the living room camera. The memory card showed Soren arriving 30 minutes after I'd left for work that morning. He had a key, probably the spare from the kitchen drawer. The camera caught him moving around our house like he owned it, making coffee in our kitchen, sitting in my chair. But the real revelation came when I fast-forwarded to the afternoon. Hazel had come home early, and the camera captured them together on our couch. Not just talking, embracing, kissing, planning. The audio was clear enough to make out most of their conversation. He's getting suspicious, Hazel said. Asked about you yesterday. Maybe we should cool it for a while. It's too late for that now. Her hand moved to her stomach. We're in this together. What if he finds out? He won't. Asher's not that smart. He sees what he wants to see. Not that smart. I rewound and played that part again, letting the words sink in. My wife of 8 years, carrying my brother's child, thought I was too stupid to figure it out. I ejected the memory card and locked it in my toolbox. Then I sat in my kitchen, drinking coffee and planning the next phase. They wanted to play games? Fine. But they were about to learn that this particular game had rules they didn't understand. And I was very good at following rules, especially the ones I made myself. Saturday morning brought the first real test of my resolve. Hazel was making pancakes, something she hadn't done in months, humming softly while she worked. The domestic scene felt like a mockery of everything we'd once been. You're in a good mood, I observed, sipping my coffee. Just a beautiful morning. She smiled at me, the same radiant expression I'd seen outside the clinic. I was thinking we should do something together today, maybe drive up to the lake. The lake house, where we'd spent our honeymoon, where we'd talked about having children someday. The irony wasn't lost on me. Can't today. Have to help Jerry at the gym. Equipment maintenance. Her smile faltered slightly. On Saturday? Machines don't care what day it is. I stood and kissed her cheek, tasting her disappointment. Rain check? I did go to the gym, but not for maintenance. Jerry Coach Malley had been training fighters for 30 years, and he taught me more about strategy than just boxing. I found him in his office, reviewing fight videos on an old laptop. Asher, didn't expect to see you today. He looked up from the screen, studying my face with the sharp eyes that had guided dozens of fighters through their careers. You look like hell, son. What's eating you? I closed the office door and sat across from his desk. Jerry was one of the few people I trusted completely, a man who'd seen enough of life's ugly truths to handle one more. Hypothetical question, Coach. Say you're in a fight, and you realize your opponent has been training with your own corner man. What do you do? Jerry leaned back in his chair, his weathered face serious. First thing, don't let them know you know. Element of surprise is everything. Second thing, you change your whole strategy. Can't fight the fight they're expecting. And if the corner man is family? Family's just people who share your name, son. Loyalty's what matters, and that's earned. He paused. This isn't hypothetical, is it? I told him everything. The clinic, the timeline, the recordings. Jerry listened without interruption, occasionally nodding or shaking his head. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You got evidence, you got timeline, you got motive. Question is, what's your end game? You looking to win this fight, or just hurt them back? I want them to face consequences, real ones. Then you need to be smart about it. Emotional reactions lose fights. You want to take them down, you do it systematic-like, piece by piece. He pulled out a legal pad and started sketching a diagram. Your wife's a lawyer, right? So she's got reputation, professional standing, social circle. Those are pressure points. Your brother's got what? Not much. He's been coasting on charm his whole life. No real career, no savings. Lives in a rental apartment. So he's got less to lose, which makes him more dangerous. Desperate people do stupid things. Jerry tapped his pen on the pad. You need to separate them. Make them turn on each other. How? Information warfare. Feed them different stories, see who breaks first, and document everything. You're going to need proof when this goes public. I spent the afternoon at the gym, working the heavy bag while Jerry's words echoed in my mind. By the time I got home, I had the framework of a plan. Hazel was on the phone when I walked in, speaking in the low, careful tone she used for sensitive legal matters. She ended the call quickly when she saw me. Work? I asked. Client emergency, the Morrison case again. She moved to the kitchen, avoiding eye contact. How was the gym? Jerry's thinking about retiring. Wants me to help him find buyers for some of the equipment. That's nice. She was making dinner, but her movements seemed mechanical, distracted. Soren called while you were out, I lied. Said he had some good news about a job interview. Hazel's hand paused on the refrigerator handle. Oh? He didn't mention anything to me. Maybe he wanted to surprise you. Said something about a research position at a law firm downtown. Which firm? Didn't say, but he seemed excited. I watched her process this information, saw the slight frown as she tried to reconcile it with whatever Soren had actually told her. The first seeds of doubt, planted and watered. That evening, I excused myself early and went to my workshop in the basement. I had legitimate work to do, rebuilding a hydraulic pump for a client, but I also needed to review the day's recordings. The kitchen device had captured Hazel's phone conversation from that afternoon. She'd been talking to someone named Jocelyn, a name I recognized from her work stories. Jocelyn Hale, another lawyer at Hazel's firm, someone she'd mentioned as a close friend and ally. The situation is getting complicated, Hazel had said. Asher's asking more questions. No, I don't think he knows, but he's not as oblivious as usual. We need to be more careful. Can you run interference if he starts digging? Jocelyn. Another player in this game I was just beginning to understand. I made a note to research her background, see what kind of person my wife was confiding in. Sunday morning brought a surprise. Soren showed up at our front door, unannounced, carrying coffee and pastries from the expensive bakery downtown. Thought I'd surprise my favorite sister-in-law, he said, flashing the charming smile that had gotten him out of trouble his whole life. I was in the kitchen when he arrived, close enough to hear but hidden from view. Hazel's voice was tense when she answered the door. Soren, what are you doing here? Can't a guy visit his family? Besides, I have news. They moved to the living room, directly in view of my hidden camera. I stayed in the kitchen, listening to their conversation while pretending to read the Sunday paper. You can't just show up like this, Hazel was saying. What if Asher gets suspicious? Relax. He's not that observant. Besides, I really do have news. Remember that research position you mentioned? I applied to 3 different firms. Which firms? Peterson and Associates, Crawford Legal, and Blackstone and Partners. All downtown, all looking for freelance researchers. I smiled despite myself. Soren was feeding Hazel the same kind of misdirection I'd been using on her. Either he was naturally paranoid, or he was smarter than I'd given him credit for. That's great, Hazel said, but her voice carried uncertainty. I thought you were focusing on the Morrison case research I mentioned. What Morrison case? A long pause. I could picture them staring at each other, both realizing that someone's story didn't match. I should go, Soren said finally. Tell Asher I stopped by. After he left, I found Hazel in the living room, staring out the window with a troubled expression. Soren stopped by, she said without turning around. I heard. Coffee smells good. He's looking for work. Research positions. That's what he told me on the phone. Good for him. She turned to face me, studying my expression. When exactly did he call you? Yesterday afternoon, while you were dealing with your client emergency. Right, the Morrison case. Must be a complicated case, the way it keeps coming up. Very complicated. We stood there for a moment, both of us lying, both of us knowing the other was lying, neither willing to break the facade first. It was almost impressive, in a twisted way. That afternoon, I drove to the downtown library again and spent 2 hours researching Jocelyn Hale. What I found was interesting. She'd joined Hazel's firm 6 months ago, hired as a senior associate with an impressive resume. But before that, she'd worked at Peterson and Associates, a firm that had handled some industrial accident cases involving my company. More digging revealed something even more interesting. 3 years ago, Jocelyn had been the lead attorney on a case against Trevan Industrial Solutions, my company. A worker had been injured using equipment I'd maintained, and they'd tried to prove negligence on my part. The case had been dismissed when it came out that the worker had been intoxicated and had ignored safety protocols. But Jocelyn had pushed hard for a settlement, even after the evidence cleared me. She'd been aggressive, personal, treating it like a vendetta rather than a legal case. I remembered her now, sharp-featured, intense, the kind of lawyer who took losses personally. Now she was Hazel's close friend and confidant. And the same Jocelyn who tried to destroy my business was now in my wife's inner circle, offering advice about how to handle her suspicious husband. The pieces were starting to form a picture, and it wasn't just about an affair. This felt bigger, more calculated, like I'd been targeted rather than simply betrayed. I drove home with a new understanding of what I was up against. This wasn't just about Hazel and Soren's betrayal. Someone else was pulling strings, someone with a grudge and the legal expertise to make my life very complicated. But Coach Jerry had taught me that the best offense was often a good offense. And I was just getting started. That evening, I made my first real move. While Hazel was in the shower, I used her computer to send an email from her account to Soren. We need to talk. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., the usual place. And Soren, be careful what you say on the phone. I think Asher might be listening. Then I deleted the sent message and cleared the browser history. Let them spend the next day wondering who was playing games with whom. In chess, they call it a gambit, sacrificing a piece to gain a strategic advantage. I was about to find out if my opponents were as smart as they thought they were. Monday morning arrived with unseasonably cold weather and the first real crack in their facade. I was getting ready for work when Hazel's phone buzzed on the nightstand. She was in the bathroom, so I glanced at the screen. Did you really send that email? We need to talk. Perfect. The confusion was already spreading. I finished dressing and called out to Hazel. I'm heading out early today. Got to check on the Peterson plant installation. Peterson? Her voice carried through the bathroom door, sharp with sudden attention. Yeah, they're having issues with the hydraulic systems I installed last month. Might be an all-day job. I wasn't actually going to Peterson, but if Jocelyn Hale had connections there, mentioning the name might stir up some interesting reactions. I grabbed my toolbox and headed out, making sure to slam the front door loud enough for Hazel to hear. Instead of driving to Peterson, I went to a coffee shop 3 blocks from Hazel's law firm and settled in with a clear view of the building's parking garage. My plan was simple. Watch and document. See who came and went, who met with whom, what patterns emerged when they thought they weren't being observed. At 9:30, Hazel's BMW pulled into the garage. At 10:15, Soren's beat-up Honda appeared. He parked on the street and walked into the building like he belonged there. Interesting. If he was just visiting Hazel, why park separately? Why try to look casual? I ordered another coffee and waited. The morning crowd thinned out, leaving me with a clear view and plenty of time to think. My phone buzzed with a text from Hazel. How's the Peterson job going? Complicated. Might be here until evening. Okay. Working late myself. Don't wait up. Working late. Right? I settled in for a long day of surveillance. At 11:45, a woman I didn't recognize emerged from the law firm and walked directly to my coffee shop. She was tall, sharp-featured, with the kind of aggressive posture that screamed attorney. She ordered a complicated drink and made a phone call while waiting. "The situation is escalating," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the quiet shop. "We need to accelerate the timeline. No, he's not that smart, but he's getting lucky. I don't care what it takes. This needs to be resolved quickly." Jocelyn Hale. Had to be. She matched the photo from the firm's website, and her conversation fit perfectly with what I'd overheard from Hazel's recordings. But what situation was escalating? What timeline were they accelerating? She finished her call and left, walking back toward the law firm. I gave her a 5-minute head start, then followed. The building directory listed Blackstone, Crawford, and Associates on the 7th floor. Hazel worked for Blackstone, but it also listed Peterson and Associates on the 3rd floor, Jocelyn's former firm, the same Peterson where I was supposedly working today. A coincidence? Not likely. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor and walked past Peterson's reception area. Through the glass doors, I could see a familiar figure in the conference room. Soren, sitting across from 2 men in expensive suits, papers spread across the table between them. My brother was meeting with lawyers at Peterson and Associates while I was supposedly fixing their equipment, while Hazel thought he was job hunting, while he was supposed to be having financial troubles. The pieces clicked together like gears in a well-oiled machine. This wasn't just about an affair. This was about money, legal action, some kind of coordinated effort involving multiple law firms and careful timing. I was being set up. I took photos of Soren through the glass doors, then retreated to the elevator. Back in the coffee shop, I called Peterson's main number. "Peterson and Associates, how may I help you?" "This is Asher Trevan from Trevan Industrial. I'm supposed to be doing maintenance on your hydraulic systems today, but I'm running behind. Can you confirm the appointment time?" "I'm sorry, Mr. Trevan, but we don't have any maintenance scheduled for today. Our systems are all functioning normally." "Are you sure? I have it marked on my calendar." "Let me check with facilities." "No, sir, no maintenance requests at all this week. Perhaps you're thinking of a different location?" I thanked her and hung up. So much for my cover story. But now I knew for certain that Soren was meeting with lawyers while everyone thought he was somewhere else. The question was why. I spent the rest of the afternoon documenting everything I could. Soren left Peterson at 2:30 and walked directly to Blackstone and Associates. He was inside for 45 minutes, then emerged with Jocelyn Hale. They walked to a restaurant 2 blocks away and had what looked like an intense conversation over lunch. At 4:15, Hazel joined them. I watched through the restaurant window as the 3 of them huddled around a corner table, papers and phones spread between them like battle plans. Whatever they were discussing, it was serious. Hazel kept checking her watch. Jocelyn was taking notes, and Soren looked increasingly agitated. They separated at 5:30. Jocelyn went back to the law firm, Soren got in his car and drove toward his apartment, and Hazel returned to her office. All very neat, all very coordinated. I drove home and waited. Hazel arrived at 8:30, looking exhausted and stressed. She barely acknowledged me, just mumbled something about a difficult day and headed straight for the shower. I used the time to check my recording devices. The kitchen recorder had captured a phone call from that afternoon. "It's moving too fast," Hazel had said. "I need more time to prepare. I understand the timeline, but rushing this could backfire. What if he lawyers up? Okay, but if this goes wrong, we're all exposed. Lawyers up, timeline, exposed. The language of people planning something that required legal protection." The living room camera had caught something even more interesting. While I'd been downtown watching them, someone had been in my house. The timestamp showed 3:45 p.m., right when all 3 of them were at the restaurant. So who had been here? I fast-forwarded through the footage and found the answer. A man I didn't recognize, wearing a service uniform, had let himself in with a key and spent 20 minutes going through my home office. He'd been methodical, professional, photographing documents and searching through files. A private investigator, maybe, or someone gathering evidence for whatever legal action they were planning. When Hazel came downstairs, I was sitting in my chair, reading a magazine like nothing had happened. "How was Peterson?" she asked, pouring herself a glass of wine. "Frustrating. Turned out to be a false alarm. System was running fine." "That's annoying. Wasted trip?" "Yeah. How was your day?" "Busy. The Morrison case is heating up." Morrison again. The fictional case that kept providing cover for her real activities. I was starting to admire her creativity, even as I planned her downfall. "Speaking of work," I said casually, "I ran into someone today who mentioned your firm. Jocelyn something. Said she used to work at Peterson. Hazel went very still. Jocelyn Hale? That's the one. Small world, right? She remembered me from some case a few years back. What case? Industrial accident thing. Worker got hurt, tried to blame my maintenance work. Nothing came of it, but she was pretty aggressive about pushing for a settlement. Hazel set down her wine glass carefully. She's very thorough. Good lawyer. I'm sure she is. Anyway, she said to tell you hello. When did you talk to her? This afternoon. She was getting coffee near the Peterson building. Another lie, but a useful one. Let them wonder how much I knew, how much I'd seen. Paranoia was a powerful weapon when used correctly. That night, I lay awake listening to Hazel's breathing, planning my next moves. They were accelerating their timeline, which meant I needed to accelerate mine. Whatever they were planning, it was big enough to involve multiple lawyers, private investigators, and careful coordination. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated me. Coach Jerry had taught me that every fighter has a weakness, some fundamental flaw that can be exploited if you're patient enough to find it. Hazel's weakness was her need to control the narrative, to be seen as the victim rather than the aggressor. Soren's weakness was his cowardice. He'd fold under real pressure. And Jocelyn's weakness was her ego. She took things personally, let emotion override strategy. I could work with those weaknesses, turn them against each other, make them question their own plan, force them into mistakes. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I was up against. And for that, I'd need to take some bigger risks. Tomorrow, I was going to break into Soren's apartment. Tuesday morning, I called in sick to work for the second time in a week. My supervisor, Dave, was understanding. I'd been a reliable employee for 15 years, and everyone was entitled to a few personal days. Take care of yourself, Ash. Whatever's going on, don't let it eat you up inside. If only he knew. I waited until Hazel left for work, then drove to Soren's apartment complex on the east side of town. The Riverside Gardens was a converted factory building, all exposed brick and industrial fixtures, the kind of place that attracted young professionals who wanted to live downtown but couldn't afford the really expensive developments. Soren lived in Unit 4B. I'd helped him move in 6 months ago, back when I still thought of him as my irresponsible but harmless little brother. I remembered him joking about the cheap locks, how he'd gotten the landlord to replace them with something more secure. The front entrance required a key card, but the loading dock in back was propped open for a furniture delivery. I slipped inside and took the service elevator to the 4th floor. The hallway was empty, lined with identical doors and the kind of harsh fluorescent lighting that made everything look sickly. I found 4B and examined the lock. Standard residential deadbolt, nothing too sophisticated. I'd learned lockpicking from an old-timer at the gym who'd had a colorful past before finding boxing. It took me 3 minutes to get inside. Soren's apartment was messier than I'd expected, but not in a random way. Papers were scattered across his dining table in organized piles, his laptop was open and running, and there were legal documents everywhere. This wasn't the apartment of someone struggling to find work. This was a command center. I started with the papers on the table. Most were photocopies of documents I recognized. Contracts for my business, insurance policies, financial records. How had he gotten copies of my private paperwork? Then I found the answer. A folder labeled H Source Materials contained dozens of documents that could only have come from my house. Bank statements, tax returns, business correspondence, even copies of my medical records. Hazel had been systematically gathering evidence against me for months. Another folder was labeled Peterson Consultation and contained a legal brief that made my stomach drop. It was a preliminary filing for a civil lawsuit against Trevan Industrial Solutions, alleging systematic safety violations, negligent maintenance, and corporate malfeasance. The plaintiff was listed as John Morrison et al. Morrison. The fictional client case Hazel kept mentioning wasn't fictional at all. It was a case against me. I photographed every document with my phone, working quickly but thoroughly. The evidence painted a picture of a coordinated legal assault designed to destroy my business and personal finances. But there was more. A third folder contained correspondence between Jocelyn Hale and someone named Marcus Thompson at Peterson and Associates. The letters detailed a strategy for pursuing multiple legal actions simultaneously: civil suits, regulatory complaints, even potential criminal charges for safety violations. The key is overwhelming him with multiple fronts, one letter read. Individual actions might fail, but coordinated pressure across civil, regulatory, and personal domains will force either settlement or complete capitulation. Personal domains. I found those details in the last folder. Divorce papers. Already prepared and ready for filing. Hazel was planning to leave me, but not until after the legal assault had begun. The timing was carefully orchestrated. First the business lawsuits to tie up my assets, then the divorce to claim her share of whatever remained, then the regulatory complaints to prevent me from rebuilding. But the most damning document was a handwritten note in Jocelyn's distinctive script. Pregnancy provides additional leverage for spousal support and custody considerations. Timing of revelation should coincide with initial legal filings for maximum impact. They were planning to use the baby, Soren's baby, as a weapon in the divorce proceedings. Claim I was the father, demand support payments, then reveal the truth later to maximize emotional damage. I was so focused on photographing documents that I almost missed the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Keys jingling. Someone was coming. I shoved the papers back into their folders, trying to restore the original arrangement, then looked around for an escape route. The apartment was on the 4th floor, so the windows weren't an option. The only way out was through the front door. The footsteps stopped right outside. I heard Soren's voice and someone else, a woman. Told you this was risky. What if someone sees us? Nobody's going to see us. Besides, I need to grab those files before the meeting. They were coming in. I had maybe 10 seconds to find somewhere to hide. The apartment had a small closet near the entrance, packed with coats and boxes. I squeezed inside, pulling the door almost closed, leaving just a crack to see through. Soren entered first, followed by Jocelyn Hale. She looked different than she had at the coffee shop, more casual, but also more intense, like she was operating in her natural element. The documents are on the table, Soren said, but I'm getting nervous about this whole thing. What if Asher really is getting suspicious? He's not that smart, Jocelyn replied, the same phrase Hazel had used. And even if he suspects something, it's too late. We're past the point of no return. She moved to the dining table and started gathering papers into a briefcase. I recognized some of the documents I'd just been photographing. What about Hazel? Soren asked. She seemed rattled yesterday, kept talking about accelerating the timeline. Hazel's fine. She's just nervous because she's emotionally involved. That's why I'm handling the legal strategy. And the baby? The baby is perfect leverage. Even if the paternity comes out eventually, we'll have months of support payments and emotional manipulation to work with. Soren sat heavily in a chair, running his hands through his hair. I never thought it would get this complicated. I was angry at him, you know? All those years of him being the responsible one, the successful one. I wanted to hurt him back. And now you can. We all can. What's your angle in this? I mean, I get why I'm angry, and Hazel's got her reasons, but what do you get out of destroying my brother? Jocelyn smiled, and it was the coldest expression I'd ever seen. 3 years ago, your brother cost me a major case. I had Peterson and Associates ready to offer me a partnership based on that industrial accident lawsuit. But when his maintenance work was cleared, the case collapsed. I lost the partnership, lost credibility, had to start over at a new firm. That's it? A lost case? That's everything. Do you know what it's like to have success snatched away because some grease monkey did his job correctly? I've been planning this for 3 years, waiting for the right opportunity. She finished packing the briefcase and headed for the door. The meeting's at 4. Don't be late. And Soren? Stop second-guessing this. Your brother's had everything handed to him his whole life. It's time he learned what real consequences feel like. They left, and I waited 5 minutes before emerging from the closet. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from rage. This wasn't just betrayal. It was a calculated destruction of everything I'd built, orchestrated by someone I'd never wronged, using people I'd trusted and loved. But now I knew their plan. Every detail, every timeline, every weakness. I finished photographing the remaining documents, then let myself out of the apartment. The lock clicked behind me with a sound like a gun being cocked. They thought they were past the point of no return. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I drove to the gym and found Coach Jerry working with a young heavyweight who was preparing for his first professional fight. The kid was talented but undisciplined, throwing wild combinations that left him exposed. Control, Jerry was saying. Power without control is just noise. Make every punch count. When the session ended, Jerry joined me at the heavy bag. I worked it hard for 20 minutes, letting the physical exertion burn off some of the rage while I explained what I'd discovered. They're playing for keeps, Jerry said when I finished. Question is, are you ready to do the same? What do you mean? I mean, you've been thinking like this is about your marriage, your brother, personal stuff. But this is business now. Professional destruction. You need to respond in kind. I'm not a lawyer, Coach. I can't fight them in court. No, but you can fight them where it hurts. Reputation, relationships, the things they care about most. He leaned against the heavy bag, studying my face. You got evidence of conspiracy, fraud, maybe even extortion. Question is, what are you going to do with it? That evening, I sat in my workshop, surrounded by the tools of my trade, and planned the counterattack. They wanted to destroy me systematically, professionally, completely. Fine, I could be systematic too. But I wasn't going to play by their rules anymore. Phase 1 would be separation, turn them against each other, make them question their alliance. Phase 2 would be exposure, reveal their conspiracy to the people who mattered most. Phase 3 would be consequences, ensure they faced the same kind of systematic destruction they'd planned for me. I started with a simple email sent from an anonymous account to Jocelyn Hale's work address. Ms. Hale, thought you should know that your co-conspirators are having second thoughts about the Trevan operation. Might want to secure your evidence before someone decides to cut a deal. A concerned observer. Then I sent a similar message to Soren. The lawyer is planning to throw you under the bus when this goes public. Check the partnership agreements. You're listed as the primary conspirator. Might want to protect yourself. And finally, to Hazel's work email. Your pregnancy timeline doesn't match your story. Someone's been talking to the wrong people. Time to choose sides. 3 messages, 3 different anxieties, 3 reasons for them to start questioning each other instead of focusing on me. I sent them all at 11:47 p.m., then went to bed and slept better than I had in weeks. Tomorrow, the real war would begin. A Wednesday morning brought the first signs that my psychological warfare was working. I was drinking coffee in the kitchen when Hazel's phone started buzzing incessantly. She grabbed it and moved to the living room, speaking in urgent whispers. What do you mean someone knows? No, I didn't tell anyone. Check your email. What email? I couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but Hazel's growing panic was evident in her voice. She ended the call and immediately dialed another number. Jocelyn, we have a problem. Someone sent anonymous messages. I don't know who, but they know about the timeline. We need to meet, now. She rushed upstairs to get dressed, moving with the frantic energy of someone whose carefully laid plans were falling apart. I waited until she left, then checked the recording devices. The kitchen recorder had captured 3 phone calls after I'd gone to bed. First, Jocelyn calling Hazel about the anonymous email, then Soren calling Hazel, demanding to know if she'd leaked information to anyone. Finally, Hazel calling someone I didn't recognize, asking about security protocols and damage control. The living room camera showed Hazel pacing frantically while making calls, checking her laptop, and gathering papers into a briefcase. Whatever confidence she'd had in their plan was evaporating. I drove to work, but kept my phone close. At 10:30, I got a text from Soren. Need to talk. Meet me at Murphy's Bar, noon. Murphy's was a dive bar near the industrial district, the kind of place where conversations could be private and nobody asked questions. I arrived early and chose a corner booth with a clear view of the entrance. Soren walked in at 12:15, looking haggard and nervous. He'd always been the better-looking brother, taller, more athletic, with the kind of easy charm that opened doors, but today he looked like a man who'd realized he was in over his head. Thanks for coming, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. You sounded urgent on the phone. He ordered a whiskey, even though it was barely past noon. Asher, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. Have you been investigating us? Us? Me and Hazel. Our friendship. I almost laughed at the euphemism. Should I be investigating something? That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. I leaned back in the booth, studying his face. But since we're asking questions, let me ask you one. How long have you been planning to destroy my business? The color drained from his face. What are you talking about? Peterson and Associates, Morrison case, the coordinated legal assault you've been planning with Jocelyn Hale. I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the photos I'd taken in his apartment. Want to explain this? He stared at the image of the legal documents, his hands trembling slightly. Where did you get this? Does it matter? The question is, what are you going to do now that I know? Soren drained his whiskey in one gulp and signaled for another. It wasn't supposed to be like this. It was just, Jocelyn approached me 6 months ago, said you'd cost her a big case, ruined her career prospects, she wanted payback. So you decided to help her. I was angry, okay? Do you know what it's like being your brother? St. Asher, who never makes mistakes, never fails, always does the right thing. I wanted to see you knock down a few pegs. By sleeping with my wife? He flinched. That just happened. Hazel was lonely, you were always working, and I was there. It wasn't planned. But the pregnancy was. No, that was an accident. But when Jocelyn found out, she said we could use it as leverage in the divorce proceedings. Divorce proceedings that you helped plan. I never wanted it to go this far. He was pleading now, the charming facade completely gone. I just wanted to hurt you a little, make you feel what it's like to lose something important. But Jocelyn, she's got this whole systematic plan. She wants to destroy everything. Your business, your marriage, your reputation. And what do you want, Soren? He was quiet for a long moment, staring into his whiskey. I want to undo all of this. I want to go back to 6 months ago and make different choices. Can't do that, but you can make different choices now. What do you mean? I leaned forward, lowering my voice. Jocelyn's been setting you up as the fall guy. Check the legal documents more carefully. You're listed as the primary conspirator in the fraud allegations. When this goes public, she's going to claim you manipulated her and Hazel. That's not true? Doesn't matter if it's true. Matters if it's believable. And a desperate, financially struggling man manipulating 2 successful lawyers? That's a very believable story. I could see him processing this, realizing the trap he'd walked into. What do you want from me? Information, evidence, and testimony when the time comes. You want me to betray them. I want you to stop betraying me. There's a difference. He was quiet for several minutes, wrestling with the decision. Finally, he looked up at me with something that might have been relief. What do you need to know? I spent the next hour getting details about their operation, the timeline for the legal filings, the evidence they'd gathered, the strategy for maximizing damage to my business and personal life. Soren had been more involved than I'd realized, not just a pawn, but an active participant in planning my destruction. But he also gave me something more valuable, Jocelyn's weaknesses. She documents everything, he said. Every conversation, every plan, every piece of evidence. She's got files on all of us, including backup plans for if the operation fails. Where does she keep these files? Her office at the law firm, but also at her apartment. She's paranoid about losing control of the situation. What about Hazel? How deep is she in this? Soren's face darkened. Deeper than you think. The affair, it wasn't just physical. She hates you, Asher. Really hates you. Says you make her feel small, insignificant. Jocelyn convinced her that destroying you was the only way to get her life back. That hurt more than I'd expected. I'd known our marriage was cold, but I hadn't realized it had turned to actual hatred. There's something else, Soren continued. They're planning to accelerate everything, file the lawsuits this Friday, serve you with divorce papers on Monday. They want to hit you with everything at once, overwhelm your ability to respond. 3 days. I had 3 days to turn this around. I need copies of everything, I told him. Every document, every piece of evidence, every communication. Can you get them? Jocelyn keeps most of it, but I can get some. What are you planning? I'm planning to give them exactly what they've been planning to give me, complete systematic destruction. And what happens to me? I studied my brother's face, seeing fear and regret and something that might have been hope. That depends on how much help you are over the next 3 days. Cooperate fully, and maybe you come out of this with just a ruined relationship and some hurt feelings. Keep playing games, and you'll go down with them. I'll help. I'll get you whatever you need. Good, because tomorrow we're going to visit Jocelyn's apartment, and you're going to help me find those files. I left him at the bar and drove home, my mind racing with possibilities. The counterattack was taking shape, but I needed to be careful. One mistake, one moment of overconfidence, and they could still destroy me. But for the first time since this began, I felt like I was holding the stronger hand. That evening, Hazel came home late and went straight to her laptop. I could hear her typing frantically, making phone calls, trying to regain control of a situation that was spiraling away from her. From my workshop, I listened to her panic and planned her downfall. Friday couldn't come soon enough. Thursday morning, I woke up to find Hazel already gone. No note, no explanation, just an empty coffee cup in the sink and the lingering scent of her perfume. The house felt different somehow, charged with the tension of impending confrontation. I checked my recording devices and found gold. Hazel had been on the phone until well past midnight, and the conversations painted a picture of an operation in crisis. We need to move up the timeline, she'd told Jocelyn. Someone knows too much. I don't care if we're not ready, we can't wait until Friday. Yes, I understand the risks, but staying on schedule is riskier. Another call to someone at Peterson & Associates. File everything today. All the paperwork, all the complaints, everything we discussed. I know it's rushed, but we don't have a choice. And finally, a call to Soren that made my stomach clench. It's over between us. After today, we can't have any contact. I'm sorry, but this is bigger than our personal feelings. Jocelyn says you're a liability now. They were cutting Soren loose, just as I'd predicted, but they were also accelerating their attack. which meant I had hours instead of days to execute my counterplan. I called Soren. They're moving today. Are you ready? I got the files you wanted. Jocelyn's apartment keys, security codes, everything. But Asher, Hazel called me last night. She said it's over between us. Good. That makes this easier. Meet me at the gym in 20 minutes. I found Soren in the parking lot, looking like he hadn't slept. He handed me a manila envelope thick with documents and a set of keys. Everything's in there. Financial records, legal strategies, correspondence between Jocelyn and Peterson, and this. He pulled out a small digital recorder. Jocelyn records all her strategy sessions. This has hours of conversations about how they're planning to destroy you. I checked the contents of the envelope. It was everything I needed and more, a complete roadmap of their conspiracy, with dates, names, and detailed plans for each phase of my destruction. There's something else, Soren said. Jocelyn's been embezzling money from the law firm to fund this operation. She's got a separate account for paying private investigators, filing fees, all the costs associated with taking you down. If that comes out, she's finished. We're all finished. Hazel knew about the embezzlement. She helped hide it in the firm's books. Perfect. Not only were they conspiring against me, they were committing serious crimes to do it. I had them on fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, and probably a dozen other charges. Last chance to back out, I told Soren. Once we do this, there's no going back. I'm in. I want you to know I'm sorry. For all of it. Save the apologies. We have work to do. Jocelyn's apartment was in a converted warehouse downtown, all exposed brick and industrial fixtures. The kind of place that looked expensive, but felt cold. Soren's keys got us through the front door and up to the third floor. The apartment was obsessively organized, every surface clean, every document filed with military precision. But it was also clearly the headquarters of someone planning a war. The dining room table was covered with legal documents, photographs, and what looked like surveillance reports. I started photographing everything while Soren kept watch. The evidence was damning, not just plans to destroy my business, but detailed financial projections of how much money they expected to extract from me through lawsuits and divorce proceedings. But the most revealing documents were Jocelyn's personal notes, handwritten observations about her co-conspirators. Hazel is emotionally unstable, but useful. Her hatred of Asher makes her willing to take risks. Pregnancy gives us additional leverage, but also makes her unpredictable. Soren is weak and unreliable. Good for initial access and emotional manipulation of target, but will need to be discarded before final phase. Potential liability if he develops conscience. Target, Asher, appears to suspect something, but lacks sophistication to understand full scope. His blue-collar background works against him. No one will believe he could outmaneuver 3 legal professionals. That last note made me smile grimly. We'd see about that. I found Jocelyn's computer in the bedroom, password protected, but not encrypted. It took me 10 minutes to crack the password, Revenge 2024, and access her files. What I found there was a complete digital record of the conspiracy. Email chains between all 3 conspirators, financial records of the embezzled funds, even audio files of their planning sessions. Jocelyn had documented everything, probably as insurance against her partners. I copied everything to a portable drive, then planted a small piece of malware that would give me remote access to her system. If they tried to destroy evidence, I'd know about it. We need to go, Soren said from the living room. Someone's coming up the stairs. I grabbed the portable drive and we headed for the back exit, slipping out through the service elevator just as I heard voices in the hallway. Close call, but we'd gotten what we needed. Back at the gym, I spread out all the evidence on Coach Jerry's desk. Documents, recordings, financial records, digital files, everything needed to prove conspiracy, embezzlement, and fraud. This is enough to put them all in prison, Jerry said, reviewing the materials. Question is, what's your play? I'm going to give them exactly what they plan to give me, but first, I need to make sure they can't destroy evidence or flee. I spent the afternoon making copies of everything and distributing them to secure locations. One set went to my lawyer, another to a safe deposit box, a third to a trusted friend who worked in law enforcement. If something happened to me, the evidence would still come to light. Then I made a series of phone calls, first to the managing partner at Blackstone & Associates. I have evidence that one of your attorneys has been embezzling firm funds and using them to pursue a personal vendetta. You might want to secure Jocelyn Hale's files before she destroys them. Second, to the State Bar Association. I'm filing a formal complaint against 3 attorneys for conspiracy, fraud, and professional misconduct. Documentation will be delivered this afternoon. Third, to the FBI's White Collar Crime Division. I have evidence of a multi-person conspiracy involving embezzlement, fraud, and extortion. The perpetrators are planning to destroy evidence today. Finally, I called the local news station. I have a story about corruption in the legal profession that you might find interesting. Complete documentation, audio recordings, the whole package. By 4 p.m., I'd set in motion a series of investigations that would destroy their lives as thoroughly as they'd planned to destroy mine. But I wasn't done yet. I drove to Hazel's law firm and walked into the reception area like I belonged there. The receptionist recognized me from office parties. "Hi, Mr. Trevan. Are you here to see Hazel?" "Actually, I'm here to see Jocelyn Hale. Is she available?" "Let me check. Yes, she's in her office. I'll let her know you're here." A few minutes later, Jocelyn appeared in the reception area. She looked confident, professional, completely unaware that her world was about to collapse. "Mr. Trevan, this is unexpected. I thought we should talk before things get complicated." She led me to her office, closing the door behind us. The space was as obsessively organized as her apartment, with law books arranged by height and not a single paper out of place. "What can I do for you?" she asked, settling behind her desk. I placed a copy of her own handwritten notes on the desk between us. Her face went white as she recognized her own writing. "I think the question is what I can do for you," I said. "See, I know about the embezzlement, the conspiracy, the whole operation you've been running. Question is, do you want to try to minimize the damage, or do you want to go down fighting?" She stared at the documents, her professional composure cracking. Does it matter? What matters is that the FBI is probably executing search warrants on your apartment and office right about now. Your law firm is freezing your accounts and securing your files. And the State Bar Association is opening an investigation that will end your career. As if on cue, there was a commotion in the hallway outside. Raised voices, official-sounding commands, the sound of people moving with purpose. "You can't prove anything," Jocelyn said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I can prove everything, every conversation, every plan, every dollar you stole. Your own obsessive record-keeping is going to destroy you." The door opened and 2 FBI agents entered, badges displayed. "Jocelyn Hale? You're under arrest for embezzlement and conspiracy to commit fraud." I stood up and walked toward the door, then paused and looked back at her. "You said I wasn't sophisticated enough to outmaneuver 3 legal professionals. Turns out you were wrong about that, too." The last thing I saw was Jocelyn Hale being handcuffed while her carefully organized world collapsed around her. Now it was time to go home and wait for Hazel. The final confrontation was about to begin. I was sitting in my kitchen when Hazel came home that evening, her face pale and her hands shaking. She'd obviously heard about Jocelyn's arrest, probably from the frantic phone calls that had been buzzing her phone all afternoon. "We need to talk," she said, setting down her purse with careful precision. "Yes, we do." She sat across from me at the kitchen table where we'd shared thousands of meals over 8 years of marriage. But this time, there was no pretense of normalcy, no attempt to maintain the facade. "How long have you known?" she asked. "About the affair? 2 weeks. About the conspiracy to destroy my business and steal my assets? About a week. About the embezzlement you helped cover up since this morning." She closed her eyes. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand something. I loved you, Hazel. For 8 years, I loved you completely, even when you made it clear that you thought I was beneath you, even when you treated me like an embarrassment at your office parties, even when you started pulling away and making excuses. Asher, I'm not finished. I would have worked on our marriage. I would have gone to counseling, changed careers, done whatever it took to make you happy. But instead of talking to me, instead of asking for what you needed, you decided to destroy me." She was crying now, but I felt no satisfaction in it, just emptiness where love used to be. "The baby isn't yours," she whispered. "I know, it's Soren's, and you were planning to use it as leverage in divorce proceedings while simultaneously destroying my business through fraudulent lawsuits. It wasn't supposed to happen like this." "How was it supposed to happen? You were going to take everything I'd worked for, ruin my reputation, and leave me with nothing, because Jocelyn Hale convinced you that I was the enemy instead of the man who loved you." Hazel looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "What happens now?" "Now you face the consequences of your choices. The FBI has evidence of your involvement in embezzling firm funds. The State Bar Association is investigating your professional conduct. Your law firm is probably preparing to terminate you to avoid association with the scandal. And us? There is no us. There hasn't been for months, maybe years. I just didn't want to admit it." She nodded slowly, accepting the finality of it. "I'm sorry, Asher, for all of it. I believe you, but sorry doesn't fix what you broke." She gathered her things and left that night, moving in with her parents while the legal consequences of her actions played out. The divorce proceedings were swift and uncontested. She was in no position to demand anything given her involvement in the conspiracy against me. Soren cooperated fully with the authorities, providing testimony and evidence in exchange for reduced charges. He served 6 months in minimum security and moved to another state afterward. We haven't spoken since the trial. Jocelyn Hale was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison for embezzlement and conspiracy. Her law license was permanently revoked, and she was ordered to pay full restitution to her victims, including me. As for me, I rebuilt. The fraudulent lawsuits were dismissed once the conspiracy came to light. My business reputation was not only restored, but enhanced. Turns out there's value in being the guy who outsmarted a team of corrupt lawyers. I sold the house and moved to a smaller place across town. Started dating a woman named Linda, who works at the library and thinks my grease-stained hands are interesting rather than embarrassing. Sometimes I think about what might have been different if Hazel had just talked to me instead of plotting my destruction. But mostly, I don't think about it at all. Coach Jerry was right. Every fighter has weaknesses. But the biggest weakness of all is underestimating your opponent. They thought I was just a simple mechanic who wouldn't see them coming. They were wrong.